Hey guys, my sweet tooth is itching, so I gotta update my Madolche deck for the Sparkman Yugi-Tube tourney. If you don't know what that is, check out the link in the description below. But for this video, let's take a quick look at the deck that I'll be trying to win with. Madolche, I feel, is a better going second deck because of its strong board-breaking potential via Queen Tiramisu. If I'm going to be cooking with all these desserts, it's only fair that I let my opponent cook too. The idea is to let them set up, and then break through it on the crackback. You'll also notice that I have made this a 60 card pile. The reasoning is because I'm running multiple engines. 60 cards helps to keep the bricks out of my hands and affords me more chances to see generic cards. The reason I'm running so many engines is because, although Madolche is strong, its ceiling isn't that high, especially since a single interruption or two could spell the end of my turn. In order to insulate my combos, I want to include as many ways to keep playing as possible. Without further ado, let's just go through the card by card. Starting with, well, starters. Running 3 copies each of Magiliene, Petingcessour, and Anjelly. These are the cards that you want to see in your opening hand because they can each pretty much let you go full Madolche combo by themselves. Magiliene lets you add another Madolche from deck to hand upon normal summon, so you can grab Petingcessour if it's your first turn, or a different card if you want fuel for follow-up. Petingcessour is a really strong enabler, but you have to be careful when using her since you do lock yourself into Madolche summons for the remainder of the turn. Finally, Anjelly is essentially a wildcard Madolche, sacking herself in exchange for any other Madolche from the deck. Up next are combo pieces. Hootcake is a really strong Madolche card because it can put another body on board, but by itself on your first turn, you may struggle to pull his effect off since you do need fuel in your grave. This is why I run only 2 copies. Another downside is that he's level 3, so he can't really be used for our various Xyz plays. On the flip side, he is a beast type, somehow, which is important for our next card, Messengelato. This guy is our first brick. He's not really a card you want to see in hand, since he can only trigger his effect off of a special summon, and our most reliable ways of doing this are through Anjelly or Hootcake. Therefore, you want him in the deck. Speaking of Hootcake, Messengelato does need to have a Beast Madolche on field in order to fetch a spell or trap, making the Owl a must-have in order to continue to gain tons of advantage. I'm gonna take a quick detour and go over those Madolche spells and traps that Messengelato is able to fetch for us. Salon will grant us an additional normal summon per turn. Not an amazing effect per se, but it does come up since, for example, Magiliene needs to be normaled in order to trigger her effect. It also lets us to continue setting more spells and traps whenever we bounce a Madolche card, which is an easy feat to pull off. Ticket lets us continue to swarm the field. Chateau buffs our monsters to respectable levels, while also enabling a reset on our grave. And finally, Promenade is an Omni-Negate that also lets us recycle Xyz material later on. The last Madolche card is a definite brick, Puddingcess. We only run her because we have to, in order to make the most out of our chocolate a la mode. But that's it for the Madolche stuff. Of course, being an Earth-based strategy, the Vernusylphs are a great inclusion to allow us to extend more monsters on field, and to help us unclog our hand by letting us pitch our various bricks, like Puddingcess or Messengelato. The fact that they are all Earth Fairies is also good for providing synergy to one of our hand traps, Herald of Orange Light. As explained earlier, since this deck is a primarily board-breaking variant, I don't run too many hand traps, but this card is simply too good not to run in my opinion. Speaking of hand traps, the only other one that we really run is Gnomaterial. Ever heard of this card? It's actually not bad. It can shut down one monster on the opponent's side of the field by preventing it from being used as extra deck material, hence the name. So it's kinda like Contact C, but even better in some ways. Also, being an Earth Fairy means it's searchable off of misting Seedlings. Our last Earth Fairies are the 2 legal Ishizu monsters, Keldo and Mudora. They're technically also hand traps, but can serve as level 4 extenders in a pinch if we really need to make an Xyz play. Since the Vernusylphs all lock us into earth monsters, we do have to be careful with the various miscellaneous monsters that we run. For board breaking potential, I've gone with Pank, Fenrir, Alpha, and Kumoungous. Aside from the Kaiju, these other monsters are usually free extenders, allowing them to serve multiple purposes. Our last miscellaneous monster is Redox. Kind of a flex pick, but I wanted to try him out. Since our Madolche cards want an empty grave, Petingcessour, I thought Redox could help us empty it out while also putting a high attack monster on the field. The rest of our deck is all board breaking cards. Triple Tack, Thrust, Droplet, Lightning Storm, and Evenly all help to dismantle even the sturdiest of boards. Called By is our one-of attempt to get our Madolche combo to go through, and Imperm is good both going first and second. The last two cards are purely filler. One thing to note though is that Belle is an earth monster, so she manages to stay active even under Vernusylph, in case that ever comes up. Finally, Prosperity is kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, it lets us dig deeper into the cards that we need, but on the other hand, using it means that we're not going to be able to defeat our opponent since damage is halved for the turn. I've thought about replacing this with like Desires or Extravagance, but I'd have to up the count on some of my bricks to make sure I don't banish them if I went with Desires, and I'd have to really tweak my extra deck if I decide to go with Extravagance. But that's finally it for the main deck. Time to move on to the extra deck, and this is going to be real quick, since it's very straightforward. We run 2 copies of each of the Madolche monsters. That way we can always banish some for Prosperity. The last 3 slots are also primarily filler, with Zeus being a standout inclusion and Tapir being Plan B. To keep this video from running too long, you can just take a quick look at my side deck. I'm not going to really go over it since I'm still learning the meta, so I'm not even sure if my choices here are good ones. Speaking of choices, let me know what you guys think about this take on Madolche, and let me know in the comments below what would you change. Also, be sure to stay tuned for the various weekly gameplay videos that I will be using to show off how to use the deck. If I do end up making any changes along the way through this Sparkman tournament, I'll be sure to keep you all posted. But until next time, have a blessed day.